The sound of the slap echoed louder than the laughter. 1 second, kids were chasing each other across the backyard with water balloons. Someone was arguing over whether the burgers were done. My sister was laughing with our cousins near the picnic table. The next second, my cheek exploded with pain. "You touched my wife!" I stumbled backward, completely stunned. I didn't. Before I could finish, my brother-in-law, Derek, shoved me so hard that I crashed into the folding table behind me. Plates shattered across the patio. A bowl of potato salad slid onto the grass. My ribs slammed against the edge of the table hard enough to knock the air out of my lungs. Nobody moved. 40 people watched me, lying there like I deserved it. Derek pointed toward the front gate. "Get out!" I looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to tell him he'd lost his mind. Instead, my own mother looked away. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong. Until that afternoon, I believed I knew my family. We weren't perfect. No family is. But I thought we loved each other. Apparently, I was the only one who believed that. My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old. I work as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation hospital outside Columbus, Ohio. It's not glamorous work, but I love helping people learn how to walk again after accidents or surgeries. Maybe that's why what happened at the barbecue hurts so much. I spend every day helping strangers get back on their feet. Yet when I needed my own family to stand beside me, not one of them did. The barbecue was supposed to celebrate my dad's 65th birthday. Every July, my parents hosted the same gathering. The backyard always looked exactly the same. Red and white checkered tablecloths. Plastic lawn chairs that squeaked whenever someone leaned back. A cheap Bluetooth speaker playing old rock songs Dad insisted were real music. The smell of charcoal mixed with sunscreen and fresh-cut grass. Normal. Comfortable. Safe. Or at least it used to feel that way. I almost didn't go. I'd worked 6 straight days, and my feet ached. But Dad had called 3 times that week. "Don't make me celebrate getting old without my favorite daughter." He always said that. Then he'd call my sister Melissa and tell her the exact same thing. Dad liked keeping the peace. Sometimes too much. I brought his favorite homemade peach cobbler. Melissa arrived 20 minutes later with Derek. They'd been married for 6 years. From the outside, they looked perfect. Nice house. Luxury SUV. 2 beautiful kids. Matching smiles on social media. Inside the family, things were different. Derek had a talent for making everyone uncomfortable without ever doing anything obvious enough to call out. Little comments. Little insults disguised as jokes. He'd ask if I'd finally found a husband yet. Or tell me physical therapy was basically giving massages for a living. Everyone laughed, including me, because arguing with Derek always ruined the mood. He counted on that. Melissa used to be different before she married him. She laughed louder. She called me almost every day. We went hiking together. Movie nights. Road trips. Then, slowly, she disappeared. Not all at once. Just little pieces. She stopped answering texts. Canceled plans. Started asking Derek's permission before making decisions. I noticed. Everyone noticed. Nobody said anything. Because Derek wasn't violent. Not that anyone had seen. He was controlling. There's a difference. Or at least that's what we told ourselves. When they arrived, Melissa hugged me tightly. Longer than usual. "You look tired." "So do you." She smiled. "I'm fine." It was automatic. Too automatic. Before I could ask more, Derek walked over carrying a cooler. "Emma!" "Derek!" He nodded. Nothing more. That was normal. He'd never liked me. I suspected it was because I didn't pretend he was charming. Around 3 o'clock, everyone was eating. Dad stood up to make one of his painfully long birthday speeches. Halfway through, little Noah, Melissa's 4-year-old, started crying because he dropped his hot dog. Without thinking, I grabbed another one from the serving tray and handed it to him. "No fair," Derek snapped. Everyone looked over. I blinked. "What?" "Ask his father first." "I was just helping." I said ask me. Melissa quickly whispered, "It's okay." Derek didn't answer. He simply stared at me. That strange smile. The one that never reached his eyes. Then he laughed. "Relax." Everyone laughed too. Again. Crisis over. Or so I thought. An hour later, the adults spread out around the yard. Kids played tag. Dad and Uncle Rick argued about baseball. I offered to help Mom carry drinks from the kitchen. On my way back outside, my phone buzzed. A patient from work had sent me a thank you message after finally walking without crutches. I smiled while reading it. That's why I wasn't paying attention. As I stepped around the corner of the patio, someone else turned the corner at exactly the same moment. Derek. We collided. Barely. My shoulder brushed his arm. His plate tipped. One hamburger fell onto the ground. I immediately reached toward him. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Then everything happened too fast. His hand flashed across my face. Crack. The force spun me sideways. For a second, everything went silent. The birds, the music, the conversations. It all disappeared. I tasted blood. What the hell? I whispered. His face wasn't angry. It was furious. You grabbed my wife. I stared. What are you talking about? You shoved into me, trying to reach Melissa. Melissa was standing 6 feet away. Confused. I didn't touch. He shoved me. Hard. My back smashed into the folding table. The entire thing collapsed beneath me. Glass bottles rolled across the concrete. Someone screamed. My ribs burned. I couldn't breathe. Then Derek pointed toward the gate. Leave. Nobody moved. I looked at Dad. Dad! His mouth opened. Closed. Mom folded her arms. Melissa looked terrified. Not of me. Of Derek. I didn't do anything, I said. Silence. I accidentally bumped into him. Still nothing. Derek stepped closer. You want another one? The words came out quietly, calmly, which somehow made them scarier. Then Uncle Rick stood. That's enough. For one incredible second, I thought someone was finally going to stop this. Instead, he looked at me. Emma, maybe you should head home. I laughed. Actually laughed. You've got to be kidding. Nobody answered. My cousin Ashley refused to look me in the eye. Even Grandma stared at her lap. 40 people. Not one voice. Not one. That's when humiliation hit harder than the slap. I realized they weren't shocked. They were choosing. And they weren't choosing me. I slowly picked up my purse from the grass. The peach cobbler I'd spent 2 hours making was upside down in the dirt. I stared at it for several seconds. It seemed ridiculous that I noticed something so small. But grief works that way. Sometimes it's not the betrayal that breaks you. It's seeing peaches and whipped cream soaking into the lawn. As I reached the gate, I heard footsteps behind me. Melissa! She grabbed my wrist. I'm sorry. I turned around. Then tell them. Tears filled her eyes. I can't. Why? She looked back toward Derek. Hill! She stopped. Hill what? Nothing. She let go. Walked away. Without another word. The drive home felt unreal. I kept replaying the slap. Over. And over. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe Derek had mistaken what happened. Maybe. No. I'd bumped into him. That was it. Nothing else. So why had everyone acted like I deserved it? When I got home, I noticed fingerprints forming on my cheek. I pressed an ice pack against it. My phone buzzed. Dad. I answered immediately. Please tell me you called to apologize. Silence. Then. Maybe it's better if everyone cools off. I nearly dropped the phone. You're serious? Derek said. I don't care what Derek said. He thinks you were being inappropriate. I couldn't even process the sentence. Inappropriate. You know he can be protective. He assaulted me. Dad sighed. I just don't want this family torn apart. I hung up. That night I barely slept. At 2 a.m, I opened Facebook. Big mistake. Pictures from the barbecue had already been uploaded. Everyone smiling. Everyone eating cake. Everyone celebrating. As if I'd never existed. Then I noticed something strange. One photo had been taken just seconds before Derek hit me. I zoomed in. There I was walking around the patio. Phone in one hand. Drink in the other. Derek approaching from the opposite direction. Nothing unusual. Then, something caught my eye. Behind Derek, Melissa wasn't looking at us. She was staring at someone else. Her face wasn't confused. It was terrified. Not because of me. Because she'd seen something before the slap happened. Something she expected. My stomach tightened. That wasn't fear caused by an accident. That was the look of someone waiting for a bomb to explode. And suddenly, a question I hadn't considered before crept into my mind. What if Derek hadn't lost control? What if he'd been looking for an excuse? I had no idea that discovering the answer would uncover secrets my family had spent years burying, and that before the week was over, someone would end up in handcuffs. I couldn't stop staring at that photo. It was blurry when I zoomed in, but one thing stood out with painful clarity. Melissa's face. She wasn't reacting to what had happened. She was bracing for it. That expression wasn't surprise. It was recognition. Like she'd watched the exact same explosion so many times, she knew every step before it happened. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Derek's hand hitting my face again. But something bothered me even more. Not the slap. The silence. 40 people had watched. 40 people had decided saying nothing was easier than doing the right thing. The next morning, I called in sick to work. My supervisor, Linda, answered immediately. "You never call in. I just need today." She didn't ask questions. "Take tomorrow too if you need it." I almost cried. Sometimes kindness from strangers hurts more than cruelty from family. Around 10 that morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then curiosity won. "Hello." Silence. For several seconds, all I could hear was breathing. Finally, "Emma." "Melissa." She sounded exhausted. "Why are you calling from another number?" He checks my phone. The words landed like ice water. "He what?" "I only have a minute." I sat upright. "Melissa, what happened yesterday?" She didn't answer directly. "I'm sorry. I don't want an apology. I want the truth." Another pause. Then she whispered something that changed everything. "It wasn't about you." "What?" "The slap. It wasn't because you bumped into him." "Then why?" "I can't explain over the phone." "Melissa, I have to go." "Wait." "If he finds out I called." The line went dead. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. It wasn't about me. Then what was it about? That afternoon I drove to my parents' house. Dad's truck was in the driveway. Mom's gardening gloves sat on the porch. Everything looked painfully normal. Dad opened the door. His smile disappeared the moment he saw me. "You shouldn't have come. I deserve answers." He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Your mother is upset." "I'm upset." He rubbed his forehead. "Derek called this morning." "Of course he had. He says you're trying to destroy his marriage." I actually laughed. "I haven't spoken to either of them. He thinks you've always been jealous of Melissa." For a second, I wondered if Dad actually believed that. Then I saw it. Not belief. Fear. "Dad." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Are you afraid of him?" His head snapped up. "What?" "You're acting like you're afraid." He immediately denied it. "Don't be ridiculous." But his voice cracked, and I'd known my father my entire life. He was lying. Before I could say another word, the front door opened. Mom stepped onto the porch. "Why are you here?" "I came to talk." "We've talked enough." "No, we haven't." She folded her arms. "You embarrassed everyone yesterday." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He hit me. You should have left before it escalated." "I didn't escalate anything." She sighed dramatically. Sometimes peace is more important than being right. Those words hit harder than the slap. Peace. That was the family rule. Always. Don't argue. Don't make scenes. Don't expose problems. Smile. Pretend. Protect appearances. Suddenly my entire childhood made sense. Growing up, Melissa and I weren't allowed to fight loudly. Mom hated conflict. If Dad forgot an anniversary, pretend it didn't matter. If Uncle Rick drank too much, ignore it. If Grandma said something cruel, respect your elders. Every problem got buried. Nobody ever solved anything. I hadn't realized how dangerous that habit was until now. "I'm not apologizing," I said quietly. Mom's expression hardened. "Then don't expect things to go back to normal." I looked at both of them. "Was yesterday normal to you?" Neither answered. I got back into my car. As I drove away, I saw Dad standing in the driveway, watching me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. That evening someone knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, my heart nearly stopped. Noah, Melissa's 4-year-old son, standing beside my cousin Ashley. I opened the door immediately. "Ashley." She looked terrified. "Can we come in?" Noah ran inside and hugged my legs. "Aunt Emma!" I knelt beside him. "What are you doing here?" Ashley waited until Noah was distracted with my dog before speaking. "I wasn't supposed to tell you." Tell me what? She looked toward the living room. Derek doesn't know Melissa brought the kids to my house this afternoon. Where is she? Ashley swallowed. She had bruises. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. What? On her arm. No. I saw them when she reached for Noah. I couldn't breathe. Did Derek do it? Ashley nodded. Slowly. I think yesterday wasn't the first time. The room suddenly felt too small. Too quiet. Every memory I dismissed over the years rushed back. Melissa wearing long sleeves in July. Canceling swimming trips. Always saying she was clumsy. Always making excuses. How had I missed it? Or had I simply believed the excuses because accepting the truth was too painful? Ashley pulled out her phone. I wasn't sure if I should show you. It was a picture she'd secretly taken that afternoon while Melissa was helping Noah with his shoes. A dark bruise wrapped around Melissa's wrist. Not one bruise. Several. Finger-shaped. Like someone had grabbed her hard enough to leave marks. I felt sick. Why didn't she tell anyone? Ashley's eyes filled with tears. She tried. What? Last year. I stared at her. What do you mean? Ashley took a deep breath. She came to Aunt Karen after Christmas. My mother's sister. She wanted to leave him. What happened? Aunt Karen convinced her to stay. I couldn't believe it. Why? Think about the children. Marriage is hard. Don't throw everything away. Every sentence made me angrier. Ashley lowered her voice. There's something else. What? Derek controls all the money. Of course he did. Melissa doesn't even have her own bank card. I closed my eyes. This wasn't control. This was imprisonment. Before Ashley left, she hesitated near the door. Emma. Yeah. I think Derek hates you. I noticed. No. She shook her head. I mean really hates you. Why? He thinks Melissa listens to you. I frowned. I haven't even seen her much these past 2 years. Exactly. He spent years making sure of that. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment for hours. Pieces started fitting together. Every canceled dinner. Every missed birthday. Every awkward family gathering. It hadn't been distance. It had been isolation. One of the oldest tricks abusive people use. Separate someone from anyone who might help. The next morning I went to work. Keeping busy felt better than thinking. Around lunchtime my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Melissa, can you meet me? Where? Riverside Park. When? 30 minutes. I'll be there. She was sitting on a bench, overlooking the river when I arrived. Sunglasses. Long sleeves. 90-degree weather. She looked over her shoulder 3 times before I reached her. You came? Of course. For several seconds we simply looked at each other. Then she started crying. Not quietly. Years of crying. The kind that comes from holding everything inside too long. I wrapped my arms around her. She collapsed against me. I'm so tired. I know. No. She shook her head. You don't. We sat there for nearly 20 minutes before she finally spoke. It started after Noah was born. Derek. She nodded. He wasn't always like this. They never are. She looked surprised. You've heard stories. I work with trauma patients. Not the same trauma, but enough to recognize patterns. He apologized the first time. She laughed bitterly. He bought flowers. Second time. A necklace. Good. He cried. And after that, she looked at the river. He stopped apologizing. Why didn't you leave? I tried. When? Twice. What happened? The first time he emptied our joint account before I could. The second, he told the kids I was abandoning them. I felt my chest tighten. He said they'd hate me forever. Then she looked directly at me. Yesterday. What? I need you to believe something. I do. He wanted to hit me. I froze. What? You bumped into him. He looked at me. I knew. You knew what? He needed someone to blame. The realization made me sick. I wasn't the target. No. You saved me. Before I could respond, Melissa grabbed my hand. You have to promise me something. Anything. If something happens to me, don't. Promise. Tears filled my eyes. I promise. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small flash drive. Hide this. I stared at it. What's on it? Evidence. Evidence of what? She looked over my shoulder. All the color drained from her face. He's here. I turned instinctively. Across the parking lot, a black SUV had just pulled in. Derek climbed out, his eyes locked directly onto us. He wasn't surprised. He looked furious. And then he started walking toward us. The moment Melissa whispered, "He's here," every instinct in my body told me to run. Derek wasn't rushing. That was the terrifying part. He walked toward us with the slow, confident stride of someone who believed he already owned the ending to the story. Melissa's hand tightened around mine until it hurt. "You have to leave." "I'm not leaving you." "You have to." "No." "Emma, please." She slipped the flash drive into my palm and closed my fingers around it. "Whatever happens, don't let him get this." "What is on it?" "I don't have time." She stood before I could stop her. By the time Derek reached the bench, she had already stepped between us. His smile was almost convincing. "There you are." Melissa forced a smile that looked painful. "I took the kids to Ashley's. You forgot to mention meeting your sister." I didn't think I needed permission. His jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. Then he looked at me. "Emma, Derek, you feeling better?" He actually asked it like he was checking on a neighbor after a cold. "You slapped me." "You tripped." I stared at him. "You shoved me into a table." "You've always had a vivid imagination." He turned back to Melissa. "Come on. The kids are waiting." Melissa didn't move. "I'll be there in a minute." His voice stayed calm. "I'm not asking." People walking through the park glanced in our direction, but nobody slowed down. To everyone else, we looked like an ordinary family having an uncomfortable conversation. Only the three of us knew how dangerous that moment really was. Finally, Melissa nodded. "I'll call you," she whispered to me as she walked away. Derek paused beside me before following her. He leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "You should learn when to mind your own business." Then he smiled again and walked toward the parking lot. I watched Melissa climb into the passenger seat. She never looked back. I didn't drive home immediately. Instead, I parked outside a coffee shop across town and stared at the flash drive lying in my hand. It looked so ordinary. A cheap silver USB stick. The kind companies handed out at conferences. It was hard to believe something so small could make Melissa risk meeting me in secret. I borrowed a laptop from work the next morning instead of using my own. Paranoia suddenly felt reasonable. If Derek was controlling enough to monitor Melissa's phone, I wasn't taking chances. I plugged in the drive. There was only one folder. It was named Insurance. Inside were dozens of files. Photos, videos, scanned documents, audio recordings. Each one was dated. The earliest file was almost 4 years old. My stomach tightened. I opened the first picture. A bruise covered Melissa's shoulder. The next one showed fingerprints around her wrist. Another showed a split lip. Every photo included that day's newspaper lying beside her. Proof of the date. Proof they hadn't been taken all at once. She'd been documenting everything. For years. Then I found the recordings. The first one lasted only 30 seconds. Derek's voice filled the speakers. "I said you're not seeing your sister." Melissa answered quietly. She invited the kids to the zoo. "I don't care. They miss her." A loud crash interrupted her. Then Derek shouted, "I decide who this family sees." The recording ended. I couldn't move. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the laptop. I opened another argument, another threat, another apology. Each recording was worse than the last. Then I found something completely unexpected. A scam life insurance policy. Owner, Derek Collins. Beneficiary, Melissa Collins. At first, I didn't understand why it mattered. Then I noticed another document. 3 months later, the beneficiary had changed. Not to his children, not to a parent, to his business partner. Why? That made no sense. Until I opened the next file. Melissa had written notes underneath. "He made me sign papers without reading them. I think he's hiding money. He keeps saying if I ever leave, I'll get nothing." This wasn't just abuse. Something else was happening. Something financial. Around noon, my office door opened. Linda peeked inside. "You okay?" I quickly minimized the files. "Yeah." She studied my face. "No, you're not." I surprised myself by telling her everything. Not every detail. Just enough. The barbecue. The slap. Melissa. The evidence. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, She asked one question. Have you gone to the police? I don't know if Melissa wants that. Linda leaned forward. What she wants and what she believes she deserves may not be the same thing. I knew she was right. Still, without Melissa's permission, I felt like I was taking away the little control she had left. That evening my phone buzzed. Dad. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hello. His voice sounded strained. Can you come over? Why? I need to tell you something. Is Mom there? No. When? Now. I found him sitting alone in the garage. The garage had always been his escape. Old fishing gear. Half-finished woodworking projects. The smell of sawdust. He looked 10 years older than he had at the barbecue. He didn't even try to smile. I owe you an apology. I waited. I should have stopped him. Yes. I was afraid. I know. His eyes widened. How? Because I saw it. He nodded slowly. Then he said something I never expected. He threatened me. I stared at him. When? The day before the barbecue. What? Dad rubbed both hands over his face. He came over while your mother was shopping. Why? He asked if you'd be coming. I said probably. What happened? He told me. Dad stopped speaking. His voice broke. He said you were trying to destroy his marriage. I hadn't even talked to Melissa. I know. He said if I ever took your side, I'd never see my grandchildren again. The room fell silent. Now I understood. Dad hadn't chosen Derek. He'd chosen access to Melissa's children. He'd made the wrong choice. But I finally understood why. Why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed. He looked at the floor. I failed both my daughters. For the first time since the barbecue, I saw my father cry. Not loudly, just quietly, like a man realizing he'd spent years pretending everything was fine while his family slowly fell apart. Before I left, Dad grabbed my arm. There's something else. What? Your mother knows. I froze. What do you mean? She knew Derek hit Melissa before. My heart stopped. What? Melissa came here 2 years ago. No. She had bruises. What did Mom do? Dad closed his eyes. She told her to pray about it. I couldn't believe it. No. She said every marriage has difficult seasons. I felt physically sick. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about my mother. How many opportunities had she had to protect Melissa? How many had she ignored? Then another thought hit me. If Melissa had gone to Mom, and then Aunt Karen, who else knew? How many people had watched this happen in silence? I was halfway home when my phone rang. Ashley. I answered immediately. Ashley. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Emma. What happened? It's Melissa. My pulse exploded. What happened? Derek found the flash drive. I slammed on the brakes. How? I don't know. He tore the house apart looking for it. Where's Melissa? He took her. What do you mean he took her? I don't know where. The call disconnected. I immediately called Melissa. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. I called Dad. No answer. Then Noah's tablet. No answer. For the next hour, it felt like the world stopped making sense. Every call went unanswered. Every minute stretched forever. Finally, a text message appeared from Melissa's phone. Don't contact me again. Everything is over. I stared at it. The wording wasn't hers. Melissa always used emojis. She always signed texts with love you. This message had neither. It was cold. Perfectly punctuated. Exactly how Derek wrote. He had her phone. And maybe he had much more than that. I turned the car around. I wasn't going home. I was going straight to Derek's house, even if it was the worst decision I'd ever make. Because deep down, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I waited until morning, it might already be too late. The closer I got to Derek's house, the harder my heart pounded. Every traffic light felt like an eternity. Every minute mattered. I kept replaying that text message. Don't contact me again. Everything is over. It wasn't Melissa. I would have bet my life on it. When I pulled onto their street, every light in the house was off except one upstairs. Derek's black SUV sat in the driveway. Melissa's car was gone. I parked half a block away. For the first time in my life, I considered walking up and pounding on someone's front door. Instead, I remembered something Linda had said. What she wants and what she believes she deserves may not be the same thing. This wasn't the time to play hero. If Melissa was in danger, I needed help. Real help. I dialed 911. The dispatcher listened carefully as I explained everything. The slap, the recordings, the bruises, the flash drive, the suspicious text. The operator asked one question that made me realize how serious this had become. Do you believe she's in immediate danger? Yes. Without hesitation. Yes. 2 patrol cars were dispatched. I waited across the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. 5 minutes later, blue and red lights silently rolled into the neighborhood. 2 officers approached the house. They knocked. No answer. They knocked again. This time the front door opened. Derek smiled. Even from across the street, I could see how relaxed he looked. Like a man who believed he had everything under control. One officer spoke with him for several minutes. Then they disappeared inside. I watched every upstairs window. Nothing. No movement. No sign of Melissa. 10 long minutes passed before one of the officers walked back outside. He came straight toward my car. Miss Carter. Yes. He says your sister left this afternoon. I don't believe him. Do you have any evidence she may be inside? I hesitated. Not inside. But I had something much bigger. I have evidence of years of domestic abuse. His expression changed instantly. What kind of evidence? Photos. Audio recordings. Documents. I can show you right now. An hour later, I was sitting in an interview room at the police station. Detectives copied every file from the flash drive. They listened to recordings in complete silence. One detective finally removed his headphones. When was this recorded? Melissa documented everything. For years. He leaned back slowly. This is substantial. Another detective entered carrying a folder. We also ran Derek's name. He looked toward me. There were 2 previous domestic disturbance calls. What? Neither resulted in charges. Of course they hadn't. Because Melissa never felt safe enough to follow through. Just after midnight, my phone rang. Dad. Emma. His voice shook. They found Melissa. I stood so fast my chair nearly fell over. Where? At County General Hospital. My heart dropped. Is she? She's alive. I didn't wait for another word. Melissa looked exhausted. A deep purple bruise spread across one side of her face. Her right wrist was wrapped in a brace. When she saw me standing in the doorway, she burst into tears. I'm sorry. I crossed the room and hugged her as gently as I could. You never have to apologize to me again. She cried against my shoulder for several minutes before speaking. He found out. The flash drive? She nodded. He searched the whole house. When he couldn't find it, she looked away. I told him I'd thrown it away. He didn't believe me. I didn't ask what happened next. I didn't have to. The bruises answered for her. The detective arrived shortly afterward. He asked if Melissa was willing to give an official statement. She looked at me, then at Dad. Finally, she took a deep breath. Yes. For the next 3 hours, she told the truth. Everything. The first shove, the first slap, the financial control, the threats, the isolation, the lies, how he'd convinced her she would lose her children, how he'd threatened Dad before the barbecue, and finally, why he'd attacked me. The detective frowned. Why did he choose your sister? Melissa wiped away tears. Because he planned it. The room went quiet. He wanted everyone to believe Emma was trying to interfere in our marriage. He knew if he turned the family against her, I'd have nobody left. The barbecue had never been about an accident. It had been a performance. He'd spent weeks preparing it. He only needed an excuse. Any excuse. My shoulder brushing against him had simply given him the moment he'd been waiting for. 3 days later, detectives searched Derek's home with a warrant. They found far more than any of us expected. A hidden safe containing financial records. Secret bank accounts Melissa had never known existed. A second phone filled with messages to another woman he'd been seeing for nearly 2 years. He'd been planning to leave Melissa while making sure she walked away with nothing. The life insurance documents suddenly made sense. The business partner listed as beneficiary wasn't just a partner. She was helping him hide money. What began as a domestic violence investigation quickly expanded into financial fraud. Word spread through the family faster than I expected. Suddenly, everyone who had stayed silent wanted to talk. Uncle Rick called first. I should have stopped him. You should have, he cried. I'll never forgive myself. Neither would I. But I appreciated that he didn't make excuses. Ashley visited every day. She helped Melissa fill out paperwork. She watched the kids while lawyers and detectives came and went. Noah didn't understand everything. He only knew Mommy smiled more when Daddy wasn't around. That alone broke my heart. The hardest conversation came a week later. Mom asked to meet. We sat in the same backyard where everything had started. The broken folding table had been replaced. The grass had grown back over the spot where my peach cobbler had fallen. She couldn't look at me. I failed you. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked the question I'd carried for years. Why didn't you help Melissa? She started crying. Because my mother told me the same things. What things? That women endure. That families stay together. That divorce is shameful. She shook her head. I passed my fear to my daughters. For the first time, I saw not just my mother, but another woman who'd been raised to mistake silence for strength. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it helped me understand it. I forgive you, I said quietly. But forgiveness isn't pretending nothing happened. She nodded through tears. I know. Then she whispered something I'd waited my whole life to hear. I'm going to do better. Months passed. Derek was charged with multiple offenses, including assault and domestic violence. The financial investigation continued separately. Melissa filed for divorce. This time, she didn't go alone. Dad sat beside her in court. Ashley testified. I testified. Even Uncle Rick appeared as a witness, admitting he'd watched Derek intimidate people for years and had done nothing. His honesty mattered. Sometimes accountability starts with telling the truth, no matter how late. The final hearing was emotional. Melissa wasn't the frightened woman I'd met in the park. She stood tall. When asked whether she wished to make a statement, she looked directly toward Derek. You spent years convincing me I was weak. She paused. You were wrong. There wasn't anger in her voice. Only certainty. It was far more powerful. Nearly a year after the barbecue, Dad invited everyone over again. At first, I almost declined. Too many memories. Too much pain. But Melissa squeezed my hand. Let's make new ones. So we went. The backyard looked familiar. The same grill. The same picnic tables. The same old Bluetooth speaker playing Dad's favorite songs. Only this time, the atmosphere felt different. Lighter. Real. No pretending. No forced smiles. When Noah accidentally dropped his hot dog, everyone laughed. Dad handed him another one. No one shouted. No one flinched. No one looked afraid. It was such a small moment, yet it meant everything. As the sun began to set, Melissa walked over to me. You know something? What? If you hadn't bumped into Derek that day. I smiled sadly. I think he would have found another excuse. She nodded. He would have. We stood together watching the kids run across the yard. For years, I believed the worst thing that happened at that barbecue was the slap. I was wrong. The worst thing was the silence that followed it. Because violence can leave bruises that heal. Silence convinces people they deserve them. Our family nearly fell apart because too many people chose comfort over courage. But the truth has a strange way of surviving. Sometimes it hides inside a tiny flash drive. Sometimes it waits behind forced smiles. And sometimes it begins with something as ordinary as accidentally brushing against the wrong person. The slap that humiliated me in front of 40 relatives wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment the lies finally started falling apart. And looking back now, I'd rather live through one terrible afternoon of truth than spend another lifetime pretending everything was fine.